Okay, I'm recording now. So a couple things up front, because we'll be talking heads part of the time, Q&A part of the time. You can just hit the mute button on your end so that all the background sound doesn't merge 9 times and contribute to the general noise level. So I would just suggest going down to the bottom left of your window and clicking on mute. Just like I just did that there. Okay. So you can mute or unmute when you need to speak. On the western side, when we get to Q&A, you guys might just leave it off, leave it unmuted the whole time, just because it's enough of you. We'll just deal with any background noise there. So that's just a helpful protocol. And secondly, I don't think there's any experts on this call today. We're all learners together. And so I'm still in learning mode every single year in terms of support raising coaching. And I find that every time I talk to Gregg Glutting, he's teaching me and he's learning something too, and vice versa. And welcome, Mike Olajars. So anyway.
Hey, Dan, let me just pause. I just got a text, an email from Julie Stoa. She needs a link.
Okay, I will send her the link.
Okay.
Unless somebody can do that on the spot for me while I'm talking.
I'll do it.
All right. Just text her the link. Anyway, so I just want to invite lots of good participation. To make just a few introductions, we have Gregg Glutting. Wave if you could, Gregg. So Gregg's up in Michigan, and at one point, years past, was on the field with Chi Alpha, and for a bunch of years now has been working mainly on support raising training. And he's currently our national support raising trainer, or I don't know the exact title, but he's field staff for National Chi Alpha, overseeing all of our support raising initiatives. And so Gregg actually does manage the vertical support raising website. And he's got the programmer, they built that together, and so he's going to give us a lot of insight on using VSR in our coaching. And he also oversees the training program that we do in our SRTs around the country. Mike Olajars is another national field staff up in Boston and has been field staff for a lot of years too in many different areas of coaching. I don't know if there's any one thing I could name for you, Mike, other than just generally useful in many regards, including support raising and pioneering and coaching in any other areas, generally training in Chi Alpha. And then Delyn Cole is, if you could wave Delyn. Delyn was Chi Alpha in Montana for many years, living in community with students, and her and Curtis Cole, who's also in the national office, overseeing a ministry. And now they live in Springfield and have been there for probably a decade, I'm guessing. And Delyn is overseeing our Chi Alpha, National Chi Alpha assessment process and coaching in general, I believe. And so does a lot of tag team with Gregg. I think on this call even you'll do some tag team. So welcome to the three of you. And when Julie Stoa gets here, I think all of us know Julie. Oh, there she is right there. Hi, Julie. So Julie is at Oregon State and is also partnered with me and overseeing the support raising training in the Pacific Northwest here. So between all of us, we have different things we'll probably talk about today. The rough outline is we'll spend about 90 minutes with Gregg and Delyn, and they're going to walk us through just the general approach to coaching in support raising, including using vertical support raising, the website, for being helpful with the people that we coach. And we'll just want to leave some time for Q&A for you guys to get to the end of that time. Then Julie and I have some other things we can do for about an hour with everyone, including just specific questions about coaching interns here in the Northwest. So in terms of getting to Q&A, I think everyone can just decide which audience to gear the question to, and we'll do the second Q&A after that first 90 minutes when Julie and I are on the spot. So specific coaching in the Northwest. Also, I just want to do a run through of the storm spreadsheet that's been made that a lot of our interns are going to be using. And I would love for all of our coaches in the Northwest just to be familiar with how we're using that just to get interns off the ground. I don't know if we'll have a chance to preview MPDX, which is another excellent database managed by the Crew organization that I think I'd love to see us all move to eventually. And anybody who's just wanting to take another step further in managing their entire organizational life and have their support within also be fully accessible mobile, I think MPDX is the way to go. But we're using the programmed spreadsheet. I call it a spreadsheet app to just to get our interns off the ground in that first season. So I'll demo that. And I will put the website for that in the chat box. So if you click the little chat button at the bottom of your window, you can see any chat questions that come up. And I'd suggest if you have questions you just want to pitch out there without disrupting, you just put them in the chat box and we'll try to get to them along the way. Okay, any questions that I haven't answered that you just need to know about right up front? Okay, excellent. Well, let me pray and then I'm going to hand it off to you, Greg, and you can take it where we need to go. Okay, Jesus, we just thank you for a delightful season to be engaging in your mission by bringing in a lot of new partners, helping our interns and our young staff and our experienced staff to get up to their full budget, fully on campus. And I know that this is a skill set in coaching that most of us feel somewhat inadequate in. So I pray that you would give us a sense of partnership here and a deep shared vision for how to be helpful in our friends' lives. God, we trust that you're at work here, and we pray for your help in Jesus' name. Amen.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much, Dan, for assembling us together. And just want to do a shout out to all you guys that really appreciate your heart and passion to invest in interns to get them fully funded. And I agree, like with Dan, I don't consider myself an expert, just trying to learn and grow and help others to come along the way. So I appreciate this opportunity. What I'd like to do is share some introductory comments, and then I'll have Mike and Delyn share a little testimony, and then we'll do some training on vertical support raising. And we'll be done in less than 90 minutes. So first of all, the big picture, our goal and vision for Chi Alpha Nation is for every CMIT to have a trained support raising coach in their life. And I thank the Lord for Dan and his leadership in this direction, because you've been doing this for a while, and it's been proving effective, and I appreciate the opportunity to go to the next level. And I thank the Lord for you guys as coaches and your heart, again, for interns to be fully funded. What's exciting is that this is the vision that we're rolling out nationally in Chi Alpha for 2019-2020. So you guys are actually ahead of the curve and are at the beginning steps of the initiative for Chi Alpha across the nation for support raising coaching. I'm delighted and thrilled for this moment for 4 reasons. One is that you guys are the backbone for growth in Chi Alpha Nation. So there's a stat that 80% of our interns that don't raise their first budget are not in Chi Alpha 5 years later. And that's incredible. You know, if you think about all the investment that went into those interns, and really, you know, of course there's other things going on, but boy, I do think that first budget is huge, and we're seeing that play out in statistics. And conversely, that speaks loudly to the power in interns' lives who do raise that first budget. Secondly, support raising coaching is simply the very best top shelf opportunity that we have to raise up long-term missionaries. And you guys are making it happen. You know, so that's what's exciting. Third, the significance you have in speaking into interns' lives pastoring them, walking alongside them, helping them to achieve one of the hardest and greatest challenges in their lives is extraordinary. Your investment is astounding and life-changing. I've had the privilege of coaching over 100 missionaries to full funding, and the experience and the tools and training I've developed, I've built into vertical support raising. And so, at this juncture with you guys, I recognize that there's always a learning curve, going to the next level. But I just want to encourage you, it's worth it. And in a little while, I can guarantee in a few weeks, if you hang with it, the ability and the flexibility these tools offer will make your coaching easy and effective. So much that you'll want to send me a Christmas present. All right, and then lastly, VSR is good, but it's still developing. And I want to give a shout out to Dan Guenther. So several times I ran things by him in the development phase, and his fingerprint is on several aspects of these tools. And so sincerely, Dan, thanks a lot. You've been a big help.
No problem.
Yeah. And although we've initially rolled out our VSR in 2015, we've continued to develop it each year. So we've not arrived. We are getting there. I still consider it beta. So anything you see that can be improved regarding coaching tools, please send me an email. Be glad to do what we can to go that direction. All right, so I want to introduce the National Chi Alpha Support Raising Specialist Executive Team. So along with me, I have two incredible team members, Mike Olajars and Delyn. I've asked them each to introduce themselves and to share a testimony regarding the VSR training and coaching tools. So Delyn, if you could go first and just share.
Yeah, so I have joined this team about a year ago. I've been working a little bit prior to that with Gregg on some of the tools. So I work mainly with nationally appointed missionaries that are raising bigger budgets, the $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 budgets. That's typically who I connect with. I am currently being the coach for 3 CMITs. 2 of them happen to be my children, both going to Virginia as for their internship this next fall. And then I have another student from Missouri State that I'm working with on their budgets. So I get to use this tool, the VSR tool, coaching tools, about, right now about 10 times a week. And so I have found them to be incredibly helpful for the CMITs as well as for the nationally appointed folks. So really a testimony would be, I think what happens with the vertical support raising is it brings everything that the intern is needing to think about in regards to their support raising into one place. So their to-do list is there, they have their money that's coming in is being recorded there. So it's all in one location and it's very helpful to them. It helps an intern get organized from the very beginning. Even our nationally appointed people that have been around Chi Alpha 10 and 15 years need help getting organized on this support raising journey. And so I think that's the biggest benefit I'm seeing with the VSR is getting everybody organized from the beginning. So I really appreciate using the VSR these last few years.
Awesome, great. Thank you, Delyn. And then Mike Olajars, can you introduce yourself and share a little bit?
I came to Christ as a college student in the 1970s as a result of the Chi Alpha chapter at Ohio University. Started in 1982. There was no money. Dennis Gaylor at the Institute of Campus Missions that I attended, which is now called Regional University, said, "There's no money in Chi Alpha. We hope to see you down the road if you can figure out how to survive." I began to raise some money in the early 80s when my wife got pregnant with her first child. I served at Ohio University for 8 years. In 1990, was asked to join the first national staff team. In 1988, Dennis Gaylor assembled 38 of us in Arizona, and he said, we just went into the Division of Home Missions, which is now called U.S. Missions, in 1988. We need a couple of guinea pigs to go through the national appointment system. Nick Furtado, who was then in Michigan, and myself in Ohio were the only two that volunteered. So in 1989, we went through candidate missionary support raising in Springfield, Missouri. There was 1 hour in support raising. The lady who did the training said, if you get candidate orientation, get in line at your local grocery store for food stamps, because most home missionaries in the Assemblies of God never raise a budget. As you might expect, it was not a very inspiring support raising training moment. Dennis Gaylor asked Nick and I to raise our budgets, and we did it in a record time. At that point, the average Assemblies of God missionary took 2 years because they were only expected to get church faith promises. Nick and I raised our budgets in under 9 months, which sent a rocket across the Assemblies of God missions world because no one had ever raised money that fast. How do we do it? Well, we talked to individuals and businesses. And God helped us to raise our budget. In 1991, I wrote the first support raising materials for trainers and coaches, presented it at the 1992 Campus Ministers Conference, got tremendous pushback from Chi Alpha people who did not want to have to raise a budget. It was 15 years from 1992 to 2007 to finally convince Chi Alpha that support raising is legitimate, credible missionary activity, and coaching was critical to missionaries having their feet held to the fire to actually get their budget raised. So I'm privileged to continue to be part of this support raising story, and excited to work with Gregg and Delyn and Jeff Alexander, our national personal director, and all of our trainers like Dan and Julie to continue to inculcate support raising training and coaching, because there's a reason why Chi Alpha has expanded our number of missionary personnel in the last 6 years. It's because they're getting budgets raised and they're able to be fully funded and serve for more than 6 months without having any casualties due to not having a budget raised. The one thing I would add to vertical support raising is in the last 3 years, we've worked to help all the trainers in each area expect the participants in the area SRTs to do support raising pre-work on VSR before they show up for their area SRT. This past April, since I'm the Northeast support raising trainer, we had 46 participants. They all got their VSR pre-work done, which helped them come into the weekend prepared to receive and work through the materials that we would then take them through on that particular weekend. So we're seeing a better prepared person come into our area support raising training weekends. And then number two, the coaching tools and the coaching that's available through VSR is improving our ability to coach people at the CMIT level to the finish line. 2 case studies real quick. We have a person who does not get their coach after going through an area SRT, and they stumble and they might get to their CMIT assignment in the fall. They did not follow our instructions and they struggled. Most of our people who, as soon as they get out of our area SRT and invite someone to be a coach, they are getting to the finish line in a faster pace because VSR enables us and allows us as coaches to see someone's work output. I was in a coaching call this morning, coaching a coach of a CMIT, and I said, "Are you using VSR?" And the coach said, "No, I'm not expecting my CMIT person to use." I said, "Why not?" "Well, I don't think I need it." "Well, how is your CMIT doing?" "She's doing pretty well." "What does that mean?" "Well, I really don't know." "Well, how many calls did she make last week?" "I really don't know." "How many appointments does she have?" "I don't really know." "Did she raise any money?" "I'm not really sure." So I said, "Then you're a lousy coach because we're providing you the tools to help your CMIT person get support raised. You've been at this a month. If you don't change your routine, then I'm not sure your CMIT is going to get their budget raised, and I'm not sure we're going to have you continue as a coach because you're not following our protocols." VSR allows us to see a person's work input. So by contrast, another CMIT person last week had 45 phone calls, had 22 appointments, and raised $240. So I just want to contrast the ability of us to coach people with good tools that are available in VSR will help us get that young person's first experience, or help that young person's first experience be a positive one to become fully funded. So I am excited to continue to work with Gregg and Delyn and the rest of you to provide a good first experience for young CMITs that get to be fully funded and step into ministry in a real positive stance.
Sweet. All righty. Well, thank you, Mike and Delyn, for sharing. Appreciate that a lot. Okay, so what we'll do at this point is that, excuse me, we'll share. I have a document that you'll be able to receive after this call, and I'll send it to Dan. And it basically goes, it's 3 parts. It's 2 pages, and it's orientation day 1, orientation day 2, and ongoing coaching. So that's what we're going to be covering. And what it does is, just the overview is that it typically hits almost every part of what you need your intern to do to set themselves up for success. And so that's what we'll be looking at. Kind of the format is that I'll bring that document up and share it. We'll walk through one part at a time, and then I'll demonstrate it as if I'm the coach and Delyn is the intern, so she'll be sharing her screen on VSR in just a moment. And that's kind of the way we'll go. One thing I'd like to mention is that I'm recovering from back surgery, so I'm doing well. I'm about 5 weeks out now, but I need to stand up often, and so I'll be going off video sometimes, even though I'm still talking. Okay, so just a heads up there. All right, any questions before we jump in? Okay, all right, so I'll go ahead and share this document. Okay, there you go, so you guys can see that. And I've highlighted it just to make it a little more interesting, and so we can breeze through it pretty quick. Okay, so again, we have day 1, orientation day 1, and this is typically just the outline of what you would do with your intern. And then orientation day 2, that's just a little bit different. And then ongoing appointments, what that looks like, it's kind of similar. And then we just have some coaching helps. All right, so we'll breeze through that. So orientation day 1, and then some of this stuff is just basic. You guys know it all, but I'll breeze through it. So you obviously you schedule your first coaching call. The intern needs to be on the internet with a computer or device, and if you're not with them face to face, I have them send. I send them a Zoom link to start out, and I'll do that so that they can share their vertical support raising screen. And then just in the beginning, again, the basics, briefly discuss how they're doing, what they're thinking about support raising, and what they need for what they feel they need for success. So I just kind of, get some feelers out there, try to figure out, how they're doing, what's going on. And then kind of switch it to discuss support raising expectations. What does this coaching relationship look like? The process, the expectations. Daily emails, phone calls, how we're going to set that up. And then once a week, reporting on vertical support raising, and then the support raising Zoom phone call to go over what they reported on. All right, then I'll show you how to do this, instruct them on to get on VSR, share their screen. And then the first thing is that they will invite you as a coach. So there's a place to do that. We'll show you that in a minute. And then that sends you a coach email link, and you get that email, you click on that link, it enables you to register on VSR and then to see their intern reports and then the stuff they'll be doing. Okay, so the first main thing that you'll be doing for your coaching day one is going through the getting organized folder. Day two is going through the spiritual preparation folder. So those are the two major basics that I really want to see developed in their life. So the first day, again, getting organized folder, it goes through this stuff. Support raising goals, schedule, action chart, or how they're tracking their stuff, their prayer team, and name storming, doing database organizing stuff. All right. Then I want them to be doing a to-do list, right? So we do that on a weekly update, and where they create goals, create a target date, and then they can actually drag them to organize them. Have them go through and mention the numbers in the text fields, then get to the bottom, and that they'll set up their coaching appointment. All right. What I found for the first week is to determine, where are they at? What do they need? Is this a 0 week where they just need to organize, or are they going to start support, doing support raising? I found some people feel this pressure the first week. They need to be doing support raising, but they're really not organized enough, to begin raising support, and they need to, whatever they need to do, make letters, do database, whatever. So figure that out. And again, you guys probably know all this stuff, but, and then instruct them. So I've got some highlights here that they'll need for next week, okay? So the first one is that they'll return to the weekly update and put, mark their goals, what they accomplished, which is right there. And then secondly, I tell them, we're going to role play the 30-minute conversation. And I do that with everybody. I've found that it takes, some people might have a different number, but I've found that it takes 10 practices for an intern to be fairly decent at their 30-minute conversation. Now they'll get, maybe 3 or 4 during the SRT training, but then I want to make sure that they get several more. Even with that 30-minute conversation, I'll say, now I want you to practice it with someone else, then practice it with me next week. So I give them the heads up. I tell them next week we're going to do the spiritual preparation folder, so they can go back through that. And again, they've already done this in their pre-work. So we're just kind of putting putting legs to all this to get it into their life. And then I want them to send me a Zoom link for the next appointment. And this begins to shift the responsibility on them for the coaching relationship a little bit. And so that's helpful. All right. Any questions? It'll be a little more clear when we demonstrate it, but any questions? Okay.
Well, only one. Just this document is going to be available to us. Is that true?
Yes. Won't have the highlights on it, but yeah, I'll send it to you. And then Dan can distribute it. All right, good. Any other question? Okay. So Delyn, let's see, I'll stop sharing. Then Delyn, if you can share your screen.
I'm getting there.
Okay, no problem.
All right, here it is.
All right, perfect. Okay, so what, just starting out, I asked the intern to go on to vertical support raising. If they need to log in, they do that. Then I ask them to hit dashboard. And then it brings up their classes. Now, they'll only have one class. Delyn is a high performer, so she's got several classes. All right. And then, hold on right here, Delyn. And so the first thing that I do is, if you could scroll down to the bottom and look to the right, you'll see that there's an invite a coach. And so that's the first thing you want to ask them to do. Go ahead and click that, Delyn. And you can see, again, just I'm kind of modeling that, I'm the coach and she'd be the intern, so just kind of leading through. Typically, selecting a class, she would have just that one class. They would just have that one class that they're normally in. All right, so go ahead and type my email address, gdglutting at icloud.com. And then scroll down a little bit further, and let's see. Then go ahead and hit the email report link. So that's what they would do. And then you would get an email, and it would have a link that would register you on VSR and then allow you to get to the reports. Now, what happens is that it makes a coaching relationship with that student. And you can see on the right, if you would scroll down, well, you can see it right there. So these are all the relationships that Delyn has with her coachees, people that she's coaching, and we'll get back to this in a moment. Okay. All right, so then what you'd instruct them to do is ask them to click on their class. So if you want to click on your Northwest class, so I invited her into your training class, Dan. Just and then I would so this is day one orientation, so we're going to go through the getting organized folder. If you could click on the spiritual preparation folder, and then yes, just click on that, and then click on the getting organized folder. Right, so usually, you know, when they launch, it looks like this, so you just see the folders. So then I would say, if you could click on the getting organized folder, and then we're just going to go through all of these today, Delyn. And normally you look at the reports, but with starting out here, we're going to go to the support raising goals. And here you want to just make sure that they're on track with all of the stuff they want to do, and you can adjust things. So if you could scroll down a little bit. And so I would say, hey, Delyn, is that monthly budget still $2,500?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. And then you don't have anything raised yet, is that true?
I don't.
Okay. And then if they haven't put their start date in, you know, you would do it for today. So you can go ahead and click on that. And then it just brings that up and they can just select it. Okay, great. And then if they have a particular end date that you need them to raise their support by. So Dan, is there a particular end date that a lot of these guys need to raise their support by?
I think typically the very last week of August for our quarter schools.
Okay, so if you could do that, perfect. All right, and then calculate monthly goal. All right, so you can see that it changed the monthly goal in the middle to 663. All right. Super. Okay, if you could hit submit. So this is a real crucial part of your coaching relationship and helping them to organize what they want to do. So if you could hit view report next to that. And this is where you want to help them to understand the amount of work and commitment and really vision. And, you know, however you want to do that, but you can, you know, talk about the numbers. You know, hey, I'm excited that you're going to raise $2,500, and you know, starting today, man, August 31st, you're going to be fully funded. How do you think about how do you feel about that, Delyn?
I feel great. I'm excited for my internship. I'm pretty motivated.
Oh, sweet. Now, the exciting thing is that we have it laid out. Now, these are just averages, but if you look right at the bottom, you see where it says 96 calls. Now, if you will make 96 calls a week, just on average, 25% of those you'll actually get to interact with or talk to. We call those contacts. And then on average, a third of those you'll get appointments. So you're looking at 8 appointments a week. And then the low average is that in 8 appointments, half of those people will give you a faith promise or a financial commitment of $50. So sometimes the average doesn't quite work out. So this says 165. It usually does pretty well. When we use that end date, sometimes when it rounds up, it doesn't quite catch it. So that would be normally 200 a week. Let me see. It shouldn't be 4. That's what it is. It's just over 3. So anyways, the average does work out that, let's say 3 faith promises. So that's 165 a week, which is really accurate for our numbers. And that's 663 a month. And if you do that by August 31st, you're going to be fully funded. And, say, hey, what do you think about that? Let them talk through that. And then I go back through and you say, now, we're talking about 96 calls a week. And then talk about how they're going to do that, where that's going to work. Sometimes I say, do you have a place to call? And then I talk about the significance of 8 appointments, because the appointments are going to get you the support. Now, with this matrix, usually, especially with their first round of people, more than half are going to support. And usually it's going to be higher than $50 a month, because we're asking at $100 a month. Probably the average is going to be more like 75. But we want to really look at the importance of each of these, let's say, action steps that will get them to fully funding. Okay, so this is a big thing that you really want to spend some time on. Any questions about this one? Okay, and then I'm watching the chat box as well, so if you put something in there, I'll call it out. Okay, yep, so if you can hit backspace on your browser. And then let's look.
Actually,
Pardon me?
I have a question, Julie.
Sure. Hey, Julie.
Yeah, so with the phone call, so typically in our training, we talk about letters, and then you're having a phone call following up on the letter and to schedule an appointment. So in this context, in this document here, what are you meaning by the call? Does that mean like connecting with people to get their address? Does that mean calling them for an appointment? It seems like it means something a little different than our typical training.
Right. So it's basically whether it's a call, whether it's a follow-up to a letter, whether it's a message or a text, but it's basically anything going out from you that's trying to connect to make that contact to get a response back.
That makes sense.
Yep. And that's good to emphasize that, because it's like I got an $800 a month pledge, and I reached out by just sending a message because on Facebook, because that's normally how I contacted this person, and we did something maybe twice a year. So I just messaged, hey, I'm raising support. Would you like to get together, hear about what I'm doing? $300 a month personally and $500 from their business. But I'd never sent them a letter, and I never called them. So, okay, good. All right, backspace in your browser. Okay, action chart. And then Dan, maybe you can help me out here. Go ahead and click the download. So Dan, with your, I'm seeing the Google's, the Storm. Is this where they keep track of their support, or would that replace this action chart?
It is a support raising database for people who don't like databases. So beginning in a spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet creates alerts for overdue calls, overdue letters. It helps you, it coaches you through a timeline visually. And I think that it would, certainly could, replace the action chart, because your actions are generated straight out of the database and visible on the database, which can be shared with the coach just because it's a Google sheet.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's good. Alrighty. And this is kind of like the mini version of it. If they're wanting just to make calls, and what I encourage them is to like put initials next to each number, so that they can just kind of keep track. And so if that's something that would helpful to them, that's what's available. If you want to just say, hey, what you really need to do is do the Storm and keep all of your actions there. Maybe you want to just skip this action chart, so you can kind of figure that out. But I'd really like to see your Storm app, and if I can look at that, that sounds like it's a really good piece of development. Okay, we could backspace on the browser. Again, this is what you're trying to do is, are they organized? You're trying to give them tools to be organized with their effort. All right, and view report on wrestling prayer team. And here you want to, say, okay, so I see that you have some names, and you talked about a specific time that you're going to be communicating. So in your email, tell me about it. And so you coach around the prayer team. What are they doing? Are they doing anything? Is it effective? How are they doing? Are they sending out bullet points? That kind of thing. And just reemphasize. I use a term. The biggest thing that the devil hates is a fully funded missionary. And so having a prayer covering is really significant. And it also invites people into your journey, and just talk about, making sure they're on track with that. All right. Backspace on your browser, please. And then view name storm. View report, I'm sorry. Yeah. And right at the top here, so you can look really quickly. You can see below all the names, but here it just shows you how many they entered for each category. And then there is a download CSV, which is like an Excel sheet, and it just gives you the names. Now, again, this is here to help people just begin to deal with their names and prioritize them. They can do two things with it, which would be develop it, which would be like doing the storm. So I wouldn't suggest that. But my question is that if they have a list of names here, Dan, can they, within an Excel file format, let's say, can they upload it to Storm directly?
Yeah, we can move names from any spreadsheet into Storm.
Okay.
And my personal preference when I have an intern brainstorming is for them to start brainstorming on the sheet that they will then start to manage contacts in, and not to duplicate their efforts. So probably I would have them enter their brainstorm names into Storm just like I do, and then upload that to here if we wanted to see it on VSR. But otherwise, I'll just see it on their sheet, on the Google sheet.
Okay, so let me ask you then. So for your SRT training, how do you want them to handle this or not want to handle this feature?
That's a good question.
Or we could talk.
Coaching an intern right now, and he did put some names into the NameStorm form. He just on his own started brainstorming names on his own Google sheet, and then copied and pasted some of that into here. And in the end, I just said, well, why don't you just show me your Google sheet? Because you're going to be using that ongoing. So in the future, I might just encourage them to have the more permanent form of where they're keeping their names be what we see up front.
Okay. So then it would maybe a shift from don't do this, but let's do the Storm.
Yeah.
Okay. And we can work on that. So let's talk about that. And that might be good for Chi Alpha Nation too, if you would be open to that.
It's coming.
Okay. Backspace on your browser, and then schedule. So here is an ideal schedule, and that's what I say. And I just look to see if they have some balance in their life. The yellow is time with God, the green support raising time, and the blue is time with family or friends. What I always look for is, do they have any weekend time that for support raising, and do they have any evening times? Because they're going to be reaching a lot of friends, and so that'll be significant. Okay, and backspace on your browser. Okay, and so basically that's day. Oh no, so then we go up to a weekly update, and we'll go through this. So what I'd like them to do. So one thing is that if you could backspace on your browser again, Delyn. Actually, when I start to do a day one, I'll keep a little notepad next to me. So when we're going through the support raising goals or actions, each one of these, kind of make a little note of what they may need to create goals for this coming week. And then I also sometimes tell them that, hey, when we go through this, we're going to make some goals. So be mindful. All right. And then I have them go ahead and go up to weekly update. And ask them to go ahead and make some goals. So if you could type in another goal or two, Delyn. So you notice that she did add a goal to get to that next field. And one more. Okay, perfect. And then if you could hit submit, that'll save your work. And then if you could open it up again, perfect. And then notice that she has the dates inverted. So if Delyn, click on the gray space and you can drag them. Great. Okay, and then what I'll do is often just coach through the goals. So you talked about getting addresses for letters. So Delyn, where are some places that you'll look for those? Are they all organized, or what are you thinking there? And then coach her through that kind of thing. Go through each of them. All right. Then Delyn, hey, if you could slowly scroll down and read each title to yourself. This is what we're going to ask you to do for next week, to come back and to enter each of these. Again, hours worked, calls made. You have a couple of text fields that you can just type in, what you're thinking, feeling. And then I know church services, you probably won't be, as an intern, be calling, a bunch of churches. And then this is a good place to talk about what their home church looks like, and if there's an opportunity for them to approach. All right. And then when we get to the money field, talk about, this is a place when you actually have money show up in your account. And, so you can put that in that space. If you have a verbal faith promise or verbal financial commitment, that's exciting. We want you to put that in the bottom text field, so we can rejoice with you about that. And then when you fill it out next week, you can go ahead and click on one of the smiley faces just to let me know a little bit, how you're doing. And then in the text field, you can tell me, anything you want. I did have one person click horrible. So when she had somebody who was living in her house when she was gone, and they brought in bed bugs into their house. And so, that was opportunity to, coach and around, a lot of what she needed to do and what she was doing. So again, these text fields and all of this helps us to be, really pastoral in nature, because we know this isn't just all about support raising. It's about, a new missionary raising support in the context of their life and growing in the Lord, and that's really significant. All right, so then what we do lastly is to set the next coaching appointment, so a week from today. So go ahead and just click on that. Again, you can see there, and then put in whatever time, and then you have the Pacific time for these folks mostly, and then hit submit. Yeah, there you go. And then that saves it all. So I asked them any questions and let them know again. So for next week, we'll actually start out looking at the overview report, which will show me, let me see. At one point I didn't mention, if you could open up the weekly update. Delyn, go ahead. And then the black boxes on the right there, I don't think I mentioned that. Those are the completed boxes. So if you can click one of those, hit submit, and then open up the weekly update again. So it dropped it out of that to-do list, but you can see they're in progress, completed, and all, see it completed, it shows up there. And then it'll show up in the overview as well. And so, let's see, you can hit dashboard. Yep, so overview, and then you can see, yep, that'd be good. I hit overview. All right. So overview gives them, gives you the, let's say the matrix of, who they are, what they're doing, where their money's at when they started, and then their percentages. And then you'll have, weekly totals of what they've done and monthly totals. So let's see, Delyn, if you'd like to hit dashboard, and if you could click on someone you've been coaching that has data in it. So hold on here. So this view is the view that you would get as a support raising coach. So when you click your email link, you register on VSR, then it gives you this overview report when you click on the students. Then you can go through, as you can see, all of the work that they've done on VSR. So like if you're, so the following week you're going to do a 30-minute conversation, you can open that up. You can do it before they, before your coaching appointment, just to kind of see what they're doing. You can do it during their coaching appointment if you want to look at that. That's fine. Plus all the other stuff, and we'll talk a little bit more about the other things. So go ahead and hit overview report. And then here again for Nick, a little bit higher budget, but you can see all the money that they've raised. If you could hit the week of April 1st, and see if he filled that out much. So you can see the completed goals that they did. And scrolling further, you can see their text comments. Okay. If you can scroll to the end of that month, Delyn, then you can see their totals for that month. And what I found is really helpful is that if they, tell me, well, I'm trying as hard as I can, you can go back to this and just say, well, here's what you have been doing. I can see that you are struggling. What do we need to do differently to help you get to where you want to go? But this gives you a big picture. The other side of that is that, man, look at the hours you've been putting in, look at the calls, and look at the money. Man, you're doing well. And it's a place you can really rejoice. Another item that we can do, if you can hit backspace on your browser, is that you see next to overview report is email report. And you can click on that. You can send an overview of this person's, all their information to whoever you want. And it'll provide a PDF just of the totals, so the totals for the week and the totals for the month. It doesn't give all the comments. But if you have a CMIT director that wants to see that, or an area director or whatever, you can hit submit and that'll send that to them. Okay, a lot of information. Any questions? Go ahead.
Greg, just one thing. I just thought maybe you want to mention the coach notes down here at the bottom.
Sure. Yep. So there's a coach notes feature. If you can click on that. And these are private notes that you can keep of your conversation. So I would encourage you to do that. You probably do that. I used to use a notepad, and then I would start doing Word docs that I'd keep separate. And then we built this in, and this is what I like. If you care to use that, you can. Again, it's confidential. I cannot see them. No one can see them. The intern cannot see them. Okay. Any comments? Are you guys tracking with us? Doing okay?
Hey, Greg, I think when we get to the end of the overview of VSR, I would love to hear from you just a verbal bullet point overview of the things you try to do with the coachee and how you use VSR to do that as well. But just a bullet point overview so that we're not lost in the weeds of the details.
Right. Okay, good. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's go back to, if you could hit dashboard. So dashboard's always get back to square one. Go ahead and click on the Northwest class. So just in review of coaching day one is that we actually hit backspace on the browser, Delyn. So coaching day one is that you ask them to get on VSR, ask them to invite you as a coach, then scroll up to the top. You ask them to open their class. You ask them to open Getting Organized folder. And then you walk through that. You told them that you want to then do goals and weekly update. If you could click on weekly update. So that's the place where they do goals. And then, there you go, remember that screen. Okay, go back. And then you're gonna ask them to come back to the weekly update and mark completed goals and mark if they do calls, fill that information in. And then tell them you'll do a practice for a 30-minute conversation. And then I end it with praying for them and asking them to send me a Zoom link for our next call. Okay, so a little overview. Is that kind of what you're looking for, Dan? Or do you want it more oriented to a person? Okay, well let's go with that. Okay, guys, tracking. So any questions about day one? So I will share my screen. We'll do day two. If you want to stop sharing your screen, Delyn. Let's see. Perfect. All right, great. Okay, so it gets a little easier from here. So coach preparation. I always like to do coach preparation, which is pray. You guys probably do that, and it's basic. I ask the Lord to give me a word, for the day for them. Usually it's just a word of encouragement, but sometimes the Lord gives me something specific that I can share with them. And so I'll do that. So there's a comment about an unpaid Zoom being 45-minute session if they don't have a Zoom subscription. So maybe another video system might work better. So that would be something to consider. I haven't run into that, so I don't know if everybody's just gotten a Zoom subscription or it didn't time out because I usually have an hour meeting.
Greg, are you talking about this call?
I think they're maybe talking about a regular coaching call where you're asking them to send you a Zoom link. Is that right? So is that what, Nathan, would you like to comment on that, Nathan?
We're not going to run out of time here because I paid.
Okay. All right, good.
The question is from me, actually. I'm on with Nathan.
Okay, great.
And yes, I mean, the follow-up coaching call.
Sure. And again, if that's a problem, you could probably send a Zoom link if you wanted to pay for it, or you could I know that you could do video calls now on Facebook. I don't know if that would work.
Facebook would work great. Also, it's just one click to resend another link for another Zoom if you want to extend your first 45 minutes and just start a new meeting with the same person.
Okay, there you go.
Whatever you need to be able to share the screen. So I think on Facebook, you're not able to share the screen, so the Zoom might be the better option.
Okay, sounds great. So again, coach preparation, pray. Click your coach email link if you haven't done that. Register on VSR, and then do your look at the overview report. And we just showed you how to do that. So you can pre-do that just to see what they've done. I need to adjust my screens here. Hold on. All right. So again, if you want to have them send you a Zoom link, if that works for you or however you set that up. Again, briefly discuss how they're doing and ask the question, what would they like to discuss? That's a great way to start a coaching conversation. You might want, you might do that already. Just because something might be on their mind, it might be support raising, it might be something else. I worked with a couple that they had really kind of a tragic thing happen in their previous ministry, and they're starting, a new place, and it never came up. And then we got into this, I asked that, and then we spent the next couple of sessions dealing with how to restore a relationship, blah, blah, blah. So, as you know, we're coaching the whole person besides support raising. Again, you're going to ask them to get on vertical support raising or whatever, share their screen, and then ask them, they'll hit dashboard, hit reports, overview report. Again, we'll look at that again and do week of. And have them talk through their comments and their numbers. So you had just seen a screen where, was it Nathan, Delyn? Yeah. And so you just say, hey, tell me about your numbers. Tell me about your comments. And that's just a great way to coach around. Sometimes something you'll see in those comments, you'll say, well, tell me about this. Usually I spend 15, 20 minutes, sometimes half an hour, just talk about what they did. And then the next half an hour talking about, what they're going to do with new goals. All right, and then, so the first orientation day, getting organized folder. Second orientation day, spiritual preparation folder. And just go through these items here. We're going to do that in a minute. Again, scroll up to the weekly update, have them create goals, set the next coaching appointment, and then role play their 30-minute, pray for them to end the call. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll stop sharing. Delyn, if you can share yours.
I just want to say a little bit about the preparation folder as I'm getting that going. I think it's amazing how you go back so many times to that spiritual preparation folder in conversations, especially that when they find themselves a bit discouraged, maybe they've gotten 4 or 5 or 6 no's that week, that going back to some of those scriptures that were their foundational scriptures really has been helpful for me moving people forward.
And that's great. And on that note, what I do is when I find people kind of hit bottom, I don't tell them to work harder. I usually tell them, or I usually ask questions. Do you need to take a day or 2 and just hang with Jesus? And usually that's a big key. So, okay. So orientation day 2 starts with asking them to click on overview report. And then ask them to click on week of, Monday, whatever the week is. So if you want to click on that. And then normally there's, numbers and comments and a smiley face. And then you say, hey, tell me about that. And then click backspace on your browser. And open up spiritual preparation folder. And then just coach through each of these. So the faith and finance message, if you haven't listened to it lately, you might want to do that again just to kind of get the gist of it. But, it's about faith. It's about Linda's journey and just anything that you can pick up, and then just ask them what they got out of it. Again, that's really the bottom line of all of this stuff, and you're trying to cultivate that. The scriptures, ask them if they actually, if it's like, how many pages? I forget, maybe 8 pages or something. Maybe zip all the way through those. What's the bottom number? But there's a lot of scriptures. All my favorite scriptures are in there. So. And ask them if they've opened it, if they've read through it, if they've done it devotionally. What did they get out of it? What's the Lord speaking to their life through the Word? That kind of thing. And then in the back of your mind, you're thinking, maybe this is a goal that when we get to goals, they can create. Okay, hit backspace on your browser. I'm gonna go off here. So, and then if you can hit the view report on overcoming roadblocks, and then you can kind of just breeze through their numbers to see, what they did, and then go further down. So you ask them to, hey, just, kind of breeze what you did, and then go to the bottom there, and just say, tell me about your first one. What are you thinking, feeling about that? And usually I just do it open, and then, try to dig down to see, how is that in your life? How can you use the godly belief? How can you use the scripture, to really get some, positive things, or traction, or healing, or vision, or victory, whatever they need in that area. And then I'll do the same with the second one, and again, in my mind, I'm thinking maybe there's some goals that they need to make out of this that we'll ask later. Okay, hit backspace on your browser. And then view fortresses. And again, like Delyn said, these two things are great to come back to as a tool for your coaching, just to help, again, disciple is what we're doing, right? People to grow in the Lord at different times, different areas. And, what I do is I ask them to go ahead and just briefly read through everything and scroll down, read it to themselves. And then if you could scroll down to Lynn. And then, when they get to the bottom, I say, hey, is this your current focus? Is this what you'd like to work on? And yes, no, you want to change it? How is it in your life? Blah, blah, blah. Is there anything different you want to do out of this list now that you've reread it? Because again, they've done all this in their pre-work. And again, this could be a new goal. All right, backspace in your browser. Okay, and then we go up to weekly updates. And we do some more goals. And we don't have to do that, but have them do more goals, and then they can grab the gray and they can organize them. Then scroll down to the bottom, and we set up our next coaching appointment. And again, when they click on that, they do that, the time, blah, 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 hit submit. Great. Okay, so if you could open up weekly update, and here's a little caveat for you guys that you can communicate. See right at the top, it says weekly update for week ending Sunday, May 12th. And what happens is that the software changes Sunday midnight for them to enter their support raising activity. So all of their calls, all of their appointments, they need to read or know that if it's before Sunday midnight, it's going to be in that current week, previous to that they're entering. Once it's Monday and they haven't entered it yet, all they need to do is hit the previous week at the top. And then the data will enter into the correct week. Did that make sense? Do you guys understand that? Shake your head yes or no. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so hit previous. Hit backspace on your browser. And again. Okay, so just for the overview for orientation day 2, which is usually a week, and you don't have to do this, but we look at, have them click on overview report, and we talk through that. Then we go to spiritual preparation, and we talk through each of those. Then we do weekly update, and we create new goals, and then we create a new coaching appointment. Okay, so that would be day 2. What you can do from there on out is kind of decide, and Delyn's going to talk about this in a minute. You could tell them next week, let's look at, and then if you want them to work on their phone appointment, or they can call you, or whatever, any of the pre-work that you want to have them do, you can give them a heads up for that. Okay, any questions on orientation day 2?
I think we got 20 minutes here to finish up.
Okay, and we're just about done. So Delyn, Delyn's going to do the next. Do you want to share your screen for the doc, or do you want me to do that, Delyn?
I have it here, Greg, so I can just
Okay.
grab it. So I'm just going to review a little bit what we do after that. I do want to, on that second day of the orientation, don't forget to do the 30-minute presentation, and then always end up praying with them for sure about their support and anything else that's going on in their life. On the ongoing coaching appointments, a lot of it's the same. We're having, we're preparing ourselves. I find that this is actually really important to me. And like Greg alluded to, he's asking for God to speak to them. It is a real discipleship moment. Especially the younger missionaries, they're still learning that generosity is a godly characteristic, and so sometimes they just need a bit of encouragement, and sometimes the Lord will give you that specific word for them. Either you sent them a link or they sent you a link. That's that number 2. Briefly discuss how they're doing. What is it that they would like to discuss is an important question here. Sometimes this question can be a little bit different in regards to a couple days ago I did an appointment, and I just said, you've been busy this last week and you've had a couple end of the year activities. How have you been feeling through that? And it led to about a 45-minute discussion, which is a little bit longer than normal, but of what the Lord had really been doing in their life. So I find that this is a very important part of the process. And it also helps us move from just being task-driven to relationship-driven, which, of course, is our Chi Alpha value. Have them share their screen on vertical support raising, and then just like we've done and have practiced with you already, they're going to click dashboard. You're going to go through their review report. Again, I'm not even sure we need to show you again. I think you're been familiar with how we have done the overview report. Again, talking through them just step by step, have them look at their numbers, look at the comments that they made, ask them for why they wrote that comment, what are they experiencing. Oftentimes in this situation during the overview report, they'll put that they had a conversation, and I might just ask them, tell me a little bit about that conversation. I was meeting with my own son as a CMIT early on in the process, and he said, I'm having a hard time walking through the 30-minute conversation because I feel like those that are older than me keep taking control of the conversation, and I don't get through, kind of the process that we want to walk through. So we talked through how he could get a conversation kind of back into his control, if you kind of understand what I'm saying there. And it was really helpful for just how to have a good conversation was a good discipleship point there. And you can talk through that during that overview report. Go ahead and go then back to the weekly update and develop new goals and targets, dates for the next week. With the younger interns, sometimes they don't know what their goals are going to be. So you're going to have to learn to ask good questions. I really try to honor the coach model of kind of coming at things in a coach approach, asking good questions, trying to draw out of them what they've learned from the training and how they need to apply it now. So, how are you going to get initial contacts this week? Well, I need to probably send some letters out. Okay, how many letters do you need to send out? And that's kind of what I'm saying there. Really work at helping them. If you find that they're at a complete dead end, sometimes just brainstorming with them about what some next steps will be are important here in the goals. Again, you're going to set up that next coaching appointment with them, and obviously pray for them. Other things that you can do during this time is role play the phone call. I remember at our RUI, which was ICM at the time, Mike Olajars was doing our support raising. He literally brought phones to RUI, and we practiced the phone call. Recently, Mike also coached me through support raising, and we practiced the phone call oftentimes in our coaching calls. So practicing that 90-second conversation, it's so important. Again, using my own boys as an example, my boy was walking through a building the other day and came across his 5th grade math teacher that he didn't even remember his name. The man stopped him, asked him what he was doing. Nicholas was able to give him a 90-second presentation, and that led to that previous teacher's connecting him with his church, which is a non-AG church, and they picked him up for $150 a month. And it all came from that 90-second conversation. So I feel like role-playing that conversation is important. And then, of course, as it's ongoing, going back to some of those godly beliefs like we've mentioned, and some of the fortresses will be important. I think too, like Gregg has here, do they have a lifeline relationship? Totally important. And I think with our interns, they're probably already connected with someone that's discipling them. I know maybe in some of our older folks, the relationship and lifeline relationship has maybe been changed because of changing location. So this is really important with those older folks, but with the intern, just making sure that they're having a place to connect with. I know I was coaching a guy about a year ago, and he said that once he went on full-time support raising, I was the only person in Chi Alpha he was continuing to talk with. And so I can't be a lifeline for everybody I'm coaching, so we really had to work through that piece with him. I think it's really important to help the intern realize it's a spiritual battle, and that we need to bring, the presence of the Lord into the effort every day, asking God for his help, asking God to do what only he can do. And so I pray that prayer with my folks at the end of every conversation, that we're going to do what we can do, and asking the Lord to do what only he can do. And I'm just going to continue here, just reading through this, making sure that they complete their weekly update by the end of the week, which is Sunday at midnight. And if they haven't done that, give them time in the midst of the call to do it. And I think it's important here to show the importance of the accountability structure. It's amazing to me when people are balking at being accountable, what we see in the future. Honestly, from my seat in the national office, if they're not able to be accountable at this level, accountability at higher levels is more difficult. So I think it's important to just pause the conversation and say, hey, I'm going to let you update your previous week, and before we finish our conversation. You can see there's a note feature. We've already addressed that with you. And the email button as well, we've addressed with you. And then the last form in the docs folder called Finishing Strong, which, Gregg, I did not bring up if we want to model or show that where that is. I didn't bring that up, so maybe you could help me there. When the CMIT is near or has raised their funds, it's just a a doc that they could participate and read in.
Yeah, and they could they could ask if they don't have access to the class, they can ask their intern to open it up and look at it, and they can go through it. But it just asks a bunch of questions, and so we'll just go on.
Okay, that's good. Does anybody have any questions? I feel like we could model this, but I feel like we've done it a couple times already, and just want to. I will model it if you feel like we need to go through it, or if you're feeling good, I think we can just move on.
What do you think, Dan?
I think move on, and we could get to some Q&A as well.
Okay. So again, this bottom section is really just some examples of some good questions that you can be asking in the different areas of their life. And like Gregg said, that oftentimes you kind of have to pause on the support raising side and really deal through some of their issues that they're facing, or hopefully, if they're connected with someone already, that you move them towards their mentor in that area if you're not able to do it. I think with the interns, their time is so limited that if you take 2 or 3 weeks walking through some relational difficulty they're having or some spiritual difficulty they're having, you may slow the process. So if they do have a good mentor that they're working with, then making sure that they're getting connected in that place. And if they're not, then you do maybe need to pause and maybe meet with them an extended time so that you can get the support raising goals done as well. But here are just some good questions that you can walk through with, and I want to leave time for questions. So I think I'll just go ahead and let you guys connect here. Just go ahead and read this on your own. I do think on the local church support, if they're able to connect with their local church, a lot of our interns need help with this. You may move a little bit outside of the coaching relationship and more into a mentoring relationship when helping them have a good connect with a local pastor in their local church. Gregg, do you feel like we need to, can we pause on that so we can have some more time for questions?
Yeah, back to you, Dan.
Well, let's take, we can see everybody. Let's take 5 minutes just to talk about some questions here, and then we'll take a break. Just remember to unmute.
I had a question.
Sure.
So we talked a lot about CMITs raising their budget for the first time ever. And then we have a lot of people coming on who are not, CMITs who have been doing it for a year, or veteran staff, but they're just changing locations. Is there anything different that you would suggest or advice or something that you would do differently with someone who has done this before or has done it many times before? They're just switching a location or kind of switching up what they're doing?
Yeah, really, Delyn can also address, but actually with all these people, I go through the same thing because they just keep honing their skills. And again, we're setting up a place for them to have communication and accountability.
Yeah, I use it for everybody that I coach. I think, like I said, the accountability helps. I think it's amazing, again, the discipleship that happens in just this setting up and them being accountable to what they say they're going to do. All of that speaks into whether they're going to be a good lead director or if they're going to be a faithful staff associate. I just think that you learn a lot about a person in these moments. And oftentimes, if they're not like filling out their weekly things every week, they're waiting for our meeting to actually fill those out, then I can address that. What's causing you to really kind of balk at filling these out? And maybe it comes up that it's time management. Maybe they're not putting it on their calendar to do. Maybe it's they're balking authority. But those things come up just with the fact that they're not doing it. So I see support raising coaching as a discipleship process. And it's I will say every person that I coach, there's some characteristic that comes out that we're able to address to help them become more faithful and
so we kind of, thanks, Delyn, and we kind of look at it. I just want to do real quick. So, like, tier 1, we've been having this kind of language as like the CMIT's first budget, and then like tier 2 alpha, people just coming out of that, and dealing with that, and then there's tier 2B, which are people that have been in it a while and maybe changing locations, and then there's tier 3, which are senior staff or national appointment. And that's helped us to say, focus in really coaches on each area. And so, is it Corinne? Is that correct? Yeah. So, that's really a good question. And that's what we want to move towards for coaching.
Thank you.
Other questions? Was this helpful to you guys? Was it, this is the first time that we've actually used the Word doc. Usually I just demonstrate it. Was the Word doc helpful going back and forth, or is it kind of confusing? I know it's a lot of material. If I could get a little feedback.
Thoughts? The Word document seemed pretty helpful to us.
Okay.
Greg, you're gonna email that to me and I'll send it out, or
I will. Yep, directly as soon as I'm off.
Okay. I think I'll just need Katie's email and I should be good to go.
Okay.
So
I'll just say, in regards to the Word document, I literally just keep it beside me in my meetings, and I just follow the next step. It makes it so simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question. What are thoughts on, because you talked a lot about it's a relationship building tactic as well as a coaching tactic. What are thoughts on switching coaches partway through a support raising season?
And I've had to do that actually, just with surgery that I've had. And then I had to like re-raise in 2017 a bunch, and that's worked, and it's been seamless. And actually the VSR tools have been helpful because all that stuff's set up. They can see the history.
Yeah, so you can just go on and look at it.
Corinne, I think for me, I've had a coaching switch most summers with most interns that I've been coaching, because I'm not the intern's supervisor, their future internship director. I'm not that. I'm the coach. And there comes a point often where here at least our intern director has said, let me start getting some direct relationship with them in this last basically month. And often that has led to some good motivation on the intern's part. That's that pressure last minute and I need to meet expectations has increased as I've got the intern director more involved. So we've often had a handoff as a designed part of it, not always, but often.
Awesome, thanks.
Here's a little bit of a weird question. So I used the document and I did the highlights just to make it a little more interesting. Do you guys want the document without the highlights or with the highlights? How many people want it with the highlights? Raise your hand.
Oh, I like highlights.
Cool. All right, I'll do that. And then Dan and Julie, one additional development in VSR on the backside of it is that we put a coaching, the email and attaching a doc. And so actually for your class, we just got that doc attached. It's not the highlighted one. I can switch that. Actually, I think it's probably good for everyone. But I'll also send it so it's directly. So, you'd probably get it for your email link as well as Dan will get it to you directly. And then Dan and Julie, I'll just say, program note. You guys can also change the language now for what that email is out. And so you can do edit. So admin, edit, edit class properties, and you can see it. Okay.
Excellent.
I just want to just offer myself as a resource to anybody that's coaching and needs to kind of walk through something, or you have a question. about coaching, you can certainly call and chat with me, and I can help walk through whatever it is that you're facing.
Thanks, Delyn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and you guys can reach out to me as well, but she's like the coach extraordinaire. So
Yeah. Lynn's the one professional in this whole call, right?
that's it.
We do have an expert.
The rest of us are hacks.
So let's just for the sake of human needs, let's take a 5-minute break. We come back. Whoever's still on the call, we'll do some more things. I've got a list of things I personally would like to talk through, and other Q&A. And Gregg and Delyn, you're welcome to hang on too if you wish. It's up to you.
Okay.
So,
Hey, thanks, Dan. I'm going to take off, but thanks, everybody. Bless you guys.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Dan, should I not be here?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay, because I did have a question for you.
Yeah.
But kind of a just you question.
Okay.
Many people still here.
Well, we could ask Julie to mute, I suppose. Do you want to mute, Julie? Turn your own sound off. Not the sound we hear of you, but Jeff wanted to ask me a question.
Can you hear us still? I don't know if that's a yes or not.
I don't know. Hey, we could just mute ourselves and then be on phone audio.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I guess I don't. So, with our coaching situation, I'm just trying to figure out what's best based on the history of it.
Tell you what, Jeff, let me call you.
Okay. Hello. I'm just trying to leave the meeting. Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh, yeah.
Who's having a conversation?
Make sure you guys mute. We can still hear you.
Okay, I'm back. Maybe we'll all go off mute so we can chat for a couple minutes.
Cool.
All right.
Let's come back.
Thanks, Dan.
UCM team's there, I see.
Yes, we are.
I'm still here. Sorry, we're
Yep.
starting again.
We got Delyn.
I want to learn. I'm here to learn, Dan.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you.
Hey, by the way, I'm sporting my West Coast attire. I'm sorry that it's, there's no ducks represented in the room.
That's all right.
Is that
Why
U of
are you
O? U of O? Because
Back here.
Old school U of O.
that sure is.
The
We
old
forgive you.
school.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be appropriate for our West Coast gathering. Sorry, Julie. The other
The other Oregon school.
Well, yeah, I've
I'm
never
in a
even
duck
seen that
room
one.
though. I don't know if you can see the duck stickers.
There's an O out there. I see it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I got quite a few duck things on the wall. This is my son's
Too funny.
room.
Yeah.
Not chancing the losers.
Let me tell you all what kinds of things are on my mind, because I'm very practically driven, and I want to make sure that we're all able to get off the ground with all of our interns coming up or freshly out of the internship headed on staff folks.
Oh, God bless you.
So one of my items is to talk about, and I just have a long list of the typical hurdles that somebody encounters along the way that you have to be able to identify. Okay, they're hitting this hurdle. I need to be able to talk about this topic with them. And I think that you can't be perfect on helping them with every hurdle, but if you're just aware these are the typical things someone encounters, it's very helpful. A second thing I would love to talk through is just how to help an intern brainstorm, because everybody has that hurdle. And how do you get them out of their box, think bigger, broader in their network? And a third thing is I do want to do what I think can be a 5-minute demo of the Storm app, because there's a bunch of interns I think currently using it. I just need the coaches to know how you can look at the information and see what you need to see. And then fourthly for me, I want to talk about just what the schedule may look like for you as a coach starting now through September 1. And I do think of it in phases. Obviously, it's different than somebody who's raising the $8,000 budget national appointment where they've got a year, whatever. In this case, we have a pretty definitive cycle to get them to their intern budget. So I've got some stages that I think I want to go through. And Julie, you're going to have to help me because I'm not going to have time to look at the email and find it. So, but I think you did mention we could talk about some typical numbers that we might expect from an intern, and therefore when would you take alarm because they're not really hitting their numbers. I think that would be helpful to have realistic expectations. And Julie also mentioned just touching base on the 5-minute and the 90-second versions of a presentation so we can help our interns be ready in all seasons and in all contexts to cast vision quickly. Anything else that anybody would like to have talked about?
Maybe this is something that I can email you about later, but there's a coaching function on MPDX, and if all of our staff is going to be using it, is it a possibility we could talk about that?
Yeah.
And or email later.
Yep.
Would be fine
Okay.
too.
I made a note of that. That's good.
The option, two of the things that you had originally sent me, Dan, was to talk about coaching assignments for the summer.
Yeah.
And to talk about how to interact with the receiving director and our intern supervisor.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, I just have one thing too. Is everybody aware that U.S. Missions has increased the budget?
Well,
And then how that might affect you guys.
That'll require some translation because other than Julie and Nathan, everybody's district appointed here.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering. So basically, U.S. Missions is the one that sets the internship budget. So anybody that is an intern that's having their money come through the national office, the budget that's been set for them is 2,514. And if that needs to change and be lowered, Jeff Alexander can do that, but it needs to be written to Jeff in an email that the budget needs to be reduced. And then that intern who's asking for it to be reduced, they can do that. And it can go as low as, I believe it's 1836, I think is the lowest it can go. Oh, excuse me, 1809. 1809, I think, for the West, your guys' area.
That's true.
Okay,
So
that's
I think that's
actually,
an important piece.
that's useful to know because we do have some interns potentially, our interns at Central, and the ones that get the MMF, minority distribution, may go through national, and so we'll need to navigate that so that they're aware. U.S. Missions is not alarmed about budgets and
Mm-hmm. I think another important thing for anybody that's going their money through the national appointment system, U.S. Missions does not allow for money to be broken up. So, for example, if an intern receives a check for $1,200, even though the donor wants that distributed $100 a month over the next 12 months, U.S. Missions will not do that. So what oftentimes happens then is the intern gets a bunch of money up front, and then they don't have enough money towards the end of their internship because they got a big check early on and they spent it, and they didn't, because of their age, they don't think, hey, I could put some of this into savings. So again, just for you as coaches, I mean, these are things I talk through with interns and nationally appointed people on a regular basis. So just throwing those two things out there as well.
Excellent. Okay, let me talk about the stages that I'd envision going through as a coach. I really appreciate the Word document that Gregg Glutting is going to share that talked about having an initial interview. I forget the phrase, but there's an initial conversation, then there's a second one, and your goal is to actually go through everything that they have prepared through the support raising training. Are they organized? Are they envisioning what they need to do? Do they have their mindset and their theology straight? Have they worked on their presentation, etc.? So yeah, I would get all of that out in an initial sit down, and I do that with the interns I meet with here at Central. We'll meet a couple weeks, for an hour or two each time, in order for me to get a picture for where they're at and if they're actually ready to launch out of the gate. I think also Greg mentioned it's good to make sure that they're getting some practice in. So there's an interview phase. I call that 0 stage. So for me, stage 1 is probably the first 2 to 4 weeks of their actual support raising in the summer, where I just need to see that they're actually getting themselves busy. They're not having a slow start, but they're getting enough initial contacts out there, either whether letter or straight to phone call. They're actually getting enough out there to keep themselves busy. And I'm going to follow up weekly and sometimes even daily if I see that they're not actually getting out of the gate very fast. And for us, that's usually in June. The second stage is the chunk of the summer where our routine is similar to, it's on the coaching sheet, I think. We have a weekly phone call, but I'm getting some daily email updates. And I check them when I want to. But as long as they got out of the gate well and they had a busy enough schedule to keep themselves moving, I feel pretty good for the middle chunk of the summer. And I might even take my vacation during that middle chunk of the summer, or have 2 interns kind of co-meet together for a couple weeks while I'm on my vacation or something. There's just a routine that you want them to be in that frees the coach up a little bit. But the third stage for me is that transition. I talked about that with you, Corinne, a bit ago, which is there's this push to the end. And I do find that by the end of July, so we've got a month left, the month of August, sometimes I need to have what I'd call a reboot conversation with an intern to say, okay, things have tailed off. How are we going to get out of this last 4 to 5 weeks enough to get up to budget? And sometimes I need some help. Getting the schedule busy again, getting some more brainstorming, getting some motivation and encouragement, etc. Sometimes they need the motivation of having the intern director directly overseeing them, saying, okay, you're going to report out to me at least once a week in addition to your coach. And so that third stage, I think, has often been really dependent on the person, how well they're doing. But our goal is to actually help them near the end, not fizzle out, but actually increase. And that motivation can be pretty powerful at the end. You know, the last $500 comes in the last 2 weeks, that kind of thing. So I tend to go through stages with interns. There is a fourth stage, which is if they haven't reached a budget and we've had to make a decision as a staff, what are we going to do because they're, you know, less than 80% or whatever of the expected budget. And that's usually going to be up to the intern director, not the coach, about what they're going to choose to do with the intern ministry time. If they're just going to say, we're going to hold you off for 3 weeks, you know, until the very first week of school, you're going to miss some parts of the internship, but we need you to get the budget in. Or if they're going to say, we're going to give you, you know, 3 days a week for the first 2 months of school. It's very dependent on the intern and the director and their choices. So those are that's my overview of how I look at the schedule. Any thoughts or questions about that? How about you, Jeff Mumley?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I'm formulating one, but I'll get there.
That's fine. So I'm looking at the schedule like that. This is my long list of hurdles that I think most interns are going to run into. I'm happy to email these too, but I think it'd be useful just to jot them down. So one is an awareness that sometimes they're operating out of the wrong location every day. So they get up every morning and it happens to be in their mom's house, and they don't get going until 10 or 11 in the morning, and it's distracting, or the internet's always present, or whatever. Location really matters, and so you may need to help them relocate to get a daily routine going to where they're actually writing notes, making calls, sending thank yous, and they don't shift to the millennial distractive cycles. Second one, you do want to recognize this early if they have transportation issues. So in other words, I don't have a car. That's going to require some real help very early on in that initial interview in April or May. We need to help them. We had an a student who went to do the internship at Stanford 3 years ago. Her name was Sierra Hawthorne. Yay, Sierra. She had no car. And her parents gave her a car that broke down in the first week. So part of our first 3 weeks of support raising was her trying to solve the transportation problem. And I eventually discovered that if she made it a part of her support raising process, trying to find heavily invested people in her life who could help her to find a car, she actually gained more support out of that in the long run. And then a car that was loaned to her, and then a car that was gifted to her, and extra people buying into her process. But it was a season that was very stressful for her, but it produced fruit. You just have to recognize up front, I need to help them to get the transportation worked out. Third one, people can do a lot of brainstorming, and maybe they've got 150 to 200 names, and you discover that they have no contact info for 90% of them. So that's a major hurdle, because the default is to try and get it all on Facebook, and people just don't typically respond to a high percentage to information requests last minute on Facebook. So I think identifying even in the initial interview that they've got a lot of work to do, to build phone numbers and addresses is important. I think it's better to get that kind of information earlier on, even before you start support raising, because it's just easier. You know, you can quiz people. Do you have so-and-so's phone number? You can sometimes on Facebook, and Julie's got a little note to send that just says, hey, I would love to be in touch with you this summer. Could I get your contact? That kind of thing. Number 4, recognizing that the coachee has defaulted toward communicating entirely on Facebook or entirely on text with the people that they're contacting. So in other words, because of the fruitfulness of that kind of contact is often lower, they're actually burning contacts, burning through their list, because they're not getting high enough quality contact. I think the higher quality, the better. So voice to voice, face to face. And if you're just interacting on Facebook, it's at least when I'm coaching people, I see that they just get a lot of people ignoring them. So helping them to redefine, how am I going to relate to people in my initial contact, my secondary contact, and not defaulting toward Facebook. Number 5, making sure that they do have some people praying for them. I think in the sheet that was called having a lifeline. It's not you, so they're actually getting good relationship outside of you as the coach, and they've got people invested in them who are praying and they're talking to regularly. We call it the wrestling team in the support raising training.
I think actually the wrestling team is the prayer team that you're emailing weekly. The lifeline person is more like someone that you're in close relationship with, that you can talk with regularly about life issues.
That's true, yes. I sometimes see them as very similar. Maybe sometimes the lifeline is also on the prayer team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, losing count here. The next one, being able to help them construct their daily schedule so that they're staying busy throughout the day. So there can be a tendency to feel like I don't know what to do next, or what do I do with my free time? I sent my letters, but I don't have any phone calls to make. Well, I have always found things that I can do, besides just trying to brainstorm more names. If I'm going to visit somebody, I'm going to say, okay, how can I piggyback this drive and try and meet 3 more people who aren't on my support list, but somebody I could pray with, somebody who's a current supporter, could I meet with them? Could I call up a church pastor that I've just been delaying on and actually stop by the office and leave a note in their office? There's so many things that can be done with time if you just get out of the letter phone call box and just think, how am I trying to expand my world and keep myself busy? Okay. Organization. So this is why I wrote the Storm app. It's because every single intern tries to figure out something to do, and then there are some interns that end up with information on 5 different sheets of paper and partially on the computer, and it's an absolute mess. But they're not able to get themselves organized. So I think it's helpful early on to actually mandate how you want them to do it if you see that they're struggling with organizing themselves. And I prefer having locations where all the information is more or less in the same spot. So they're not recording information here, but the contact information is over there. And here's my brainstorm list over here. I'm trying to get it all into one spot and have them standardize on that. Some interns don't know how to think through how to categorize people. So the Storm sheet does help with this. You can actually put tags on people. They're defined tags as opposed to random things. I just don't want the intern to get lost in their own notes. So simple organization and helping them to do that. And then a last one is, it has to do with confidence. How do they project themselves? And this can be a real hurdle that you may not discover until maybe a month into it. You discover that maybe their phone calls are not translating into appointments. And so if you recognize that, okay, letter doesn't translate into phone call doesn't translate into appointment doesn't translate into support. Each one of those stages, there's things that are being conveyed in how they present themselves. And if the effectiveness goes down, if they haven't practiced, or if they have some verbal habits that are wandery or indirect language and don't speak vision and passion and excitement and organization to the potential donor. So I think it's really useful not only to hear their practice ask, the 30-minute and the 5-minute presentation, but also to practice the phone call with them, to see the kind of notes that they write. If you start to perceive that there's some hurdles, they're not getting the turnaround that you expect. For me, the turnaround is I get nearly everybody that we have an initial contact with, I'm able to get on the phone. And probably 2/3 or so of the people I get on the phone, I'm able to get an appointment with. And historically, this has never really changed. About half of the people I meet with are able to support monthly, consistently. So if I see an intern not getting those kinds of numbers somewhere close to that, I'm going to go back to, okay, how are they presenting themselves? Is there confidence and clarity in how they're carrying themselves in every stage of the relationship? And then, okay, finally, I'm adding one more here. Making sure that they're good at the follow through. So the follow through means I got a yes, and now my next to do for them is to make sure that they're actually giving, and they're committing an amount. And I think we've all encountered this. There's just people that just never get around to setting up the giving online. And so we have to go back in October. Oh man, this supporter's not giving. It's actually better to help your intern to take a due task throughout the summer with each single person, and to be bold enough to do that. Okay. Went through my follow-through issues, questions, comments at this point.
Yeah, so I got a question, Dan. So right now, all our interns are district appointed. All right, and we have a few coming through the MMF system. Their baseline budgets are significantly different from the national. Our district appointed budgets are significantly different than the national budget right now. How should we navigate that?
Well, on the practical end, the interns, no matter where they're supported, are going to get all the money that's coming to them. So on the practical end, you just need to make sure that they're raising their money and it's coming in. And if they've raised $1,500 and it's going to the national system, they'll be getting a check, and you can ask for a report. You can just have them forward to you their monthly reports, or even the daily report if you want it, on what's coming in, just as you can through UCM. You can get the reports on what they're getting. There is not an accountability system that is rigid in the national system for MAs or interns. In other words, nobody from Springfield's calling them to say you're not at budget. It's up to the local directors to be managing that, making sure that they're reaching their budgets. So I think there's two things to note. One is if interns have, let's say they've raised $1,500 and you got their national budget set at 18, so they're at 75% or whatever the number is. That does reflect on CIAFA nationally. So U.S. missions will see we have a lot of staff who aren't raising their budgets. It looks like CIAFA isn't doing their job. It affects our credibility and reputation in the national office with U.S. missions, because it looks like CIAFA is perpetually underfunded. We can deal with that, but it's better to get the budget set lower by actually sending that email to Jeff Alexander, especially from the 2,500. Get the email sent to get them lowered to the minimum. But in addition to that, having a less money coming in nationally. So let's say they have 1,500 coming in, and their budget set at 1,800. That just means that US Missions is going to send them the full amount every single month, and there's never going to be a surplus that accumulates in their account nationally. If they had 1,900, then they'd be receiving 1,800 in their disbursement, and 100 would remain, and so they'd have a surplus that accumulates for reimbursements or future raises. So that's the other just practical reality of it. I don't know if that's answering your question, Jeff. Those are just my...
That's plenty. Yep. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
But Dan, there's no option to get lower than the 18, right? That's what I'm hearing.
That's what I'm hearing too.
Okay. Okay. Delyn, yeah?
Yeah, I believe they set the minimum at that
Okay.
number.
Now, I don't know if you could make this argument, David, but I think it'd be worth exploring with Jeff. You could say, hey, we are providing X amount of resource or housing or whatever that reduces their need for budget. And you could give Jeff a reason to go back and try and get the budget lowered a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Do you want to do that?
I mean, we can ask. Right now, we just have one MMF in. We just have one who's probably going to pursue the MMF. So, but he would be in that system.
I guess I'm asking you specifically.
Other questions, thoughts?
Okay.
We'll talk about it later. Yeah. I want to talk to Sam. Second year.
Okay, well, let me go on to brainstorming. This is on my list as well. I do think this is another hurdle. I just didn't put it in the list of hurdles, but it's the biggest hurdle often for most people is, how do I get from beyond my friend group to a larger group of people who are willing to give? And there's obviously two phases to this. The best phase to be in is you're always developing relationships years in advance. And so if you're coaching somebody long term, I think that's actually what you want to include in their life right now, is developing relationships long term, because over time, the people most likely to invest in you are the ones that know you and know your mission the best. So, you know, that includes things like, what is your level of involvement in the local church? Are you in a small group in the local church? Do you volunteer? Do people know you? Do they hear your story? Are you trying to get to places where pastors are at? Pastors love missionaries. Are you getting yourself there to those places? Are you developing relationships in the community? Are you being intentional with expanding relationships maybe with parents of students, alumni, etc.? And those things I think produce the most fruit when you just work a year or two in advance. You're just building relationships. But most interns don't have that privilege. They're just needing to get to their minimum budget, so you do need to help them with their current list. The thing that I do that is always my starting point is I sit down with their spreadsheet and all their names, and I just have them start talking it through with me line by line. We'll literally go through every single name. Will tell me about this person. Tell me about this person. And I do what I do in the support raising training. I think almost all of you have been at a support raising training where we have the brainstorming half hour. And I just say, okay, you think of a new way to, a new category of people, and then I will give a new category of people. And I can come up with as many as you can. And I will just try and provide little spark plugs for categories of people. Okay, so here's a person here. It's your grandma. All right. You know, you brainstormed your grandma, so here's my addition. Does your grandma attend a church and a Bible study and have a pastor that she could introduce you to? And okay, no, I never thought about that. So they write that down. I help them continue to do that with an intern, just learning to brainstorm live with them about every single person and trying to take each person and say, where else could we take this relationship and add more relationships? I do think a lot of that's based on your own experience. So obviously you're going to be drawing from ways that you've brainstormed in the past or relationships that come to mind as you look at theirs. So one option too, if you feel like you'd like to add to the brainstorming, is just to say, well, let's get a third person to join us on our Zoom call next week. And get somebody else in your ministry, call me, call somebody and say, would you just join us and help kind of creates some sparks for new ideas. Just one more example. So I gave the grandma example, which is a pretty good example. Another example, and I just lost track of the thought here, so I'll have to come back to that in a second. Had another good brainstorm example. It was, could we take a look at your list of your wrestling team, your prayer partners, the people, the 5 people in the support raising training, you said these people will pray for me. And why don't you go and personally visit them? Have a, an appointment that's not an appointment, but it's a visit where you're sharing just how you're doing. And you invite them at the end of that to consider if there's any people in their life who would really be interested in hearing the kind of thing that you're doing on campus. Basically, a referral ask with your 5 wrestling team prayer partners. Just saying, are there people that come to mind as you're thinking about this? And I have often found that that's one of the best starting points, because these prayer partners are already heavily invested and they want to help. And so, one of them says, well, why don't I talk to my pastor at my church, and I'll set up an appointment with the 3 of us. Or, I think my brother or sister would really love to hear about this. And they take another step with you. So that's a second one. And then a third thought is to get them thinking broadly about churches in terms of brainstorming. So I did this with our friend Will Bigby Hansen. So Will contacted every non-Assembly of God church in the entire Skagit Valley last summer that we could try and get to, all the way over to Anacortes and then up to whatever's east of Mount Vernon. And he got quite a number of appointments, and it was hit and miss, but there were churches that brought him in. And since they're not AG churches, there's really no parameters other than, hey, you want to aim around the campus, churches in the town that your campus is in, and just coordinate with your other staff as well. So he'd walk up and he'd try and get an appointment on the spot by stopping by the church office. And little churches, sometimes they'd say office closed today, here's a phone number to call. So he'd call the number, crazy stuff like that. I think that article on VSR, which is called How Bad Do You Want It?, is the inspiration for me thinking broadly that way. So I would also have them read How Bad Do You Want It?, so that they can, it's just a PDF on VSR and additional help. And it will blow your mind in terms of how creative you can be in getting people in your local area to invest. So that's brainstorming. I think that's very helpful to do at least a couple times throughout the process with them. In interview stage, maybe halfway through the summer, maybe in stage 3 when they need to just get going again. Thoughts, questions? Okay.
Great.
Well, I think the last thing I would want to do is I want to do a 5-minute demo of the Storm app. I know that at UCM there's at least been some people have downloaded it, I think, and then our central interns using it. I just want you to be comfortable with how to look at it and help your intern to just keep themselves organized. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Okay. All right, so this is, I just call it a simple visual coach for support raisers. It is literally a spreadsheet that has a lot of programming behind it. And this is the little about page. How many have seen this already? Half of UCM, the other half, so it'll be new for the other half. Okay. So here's the basic idea. And then I'm going to, after I go through a single line with a person so you can see the flow, after that, what I'm going to do is copy some test information in there so you can see a larger number of names.
And Dan?
Yep.
There's a tutorial video on the website too, right?
That's right, and it does this.
Okay, great.
It does what I'm going to show you. But the tutorial video is 45 minutes, so I'm trying to learn how to be faster about it. Yeah. All right, so I start brainstorming. I put my name in here, and it immediately tells me there's information I need to fill in. In this case, it wants me to fill in my first name or tell it that it was an organization, which I could do by clicking and saying, yes, it's an organization. Anyway, the color alert just tells me it expects me to put in more information. Status, it's expecting me to be clear about what category this person is. So I already have contact info. This person, Daniel Guenther, is a call for appointment. And I'm just going to have a bunch of call for appointments, and if you need to get more info, etc. These categories are exactly like have been used in TNT over the years. It also wants me to put in a region that's so I can sort by region, and I can decide who do I want to target. In this case, these are default categories. So you see Seattle here, New York. Those are defaults. You can change them, the fill-in list here, just by going down to the tab that says region and putting in the ones that you want to have. So.
Oh my God. Wow.
Okay. So I actually, Dan Guenther lives in Ellensburg. That's his region. Okay, this is the start. What you would do at this point, really, other than maybe some temporary notes that you could have about the contact, is you could actually use this blue section from initial over to confirm, and you can use this as you start to categorize. As you move from the category into the support raising process. This is the process section. So let's say that I sent an initial contact today. That's covered up here. Today's the 10th. Okay, so you can just put in a date. It'll format it for you.
Of course.
Okay, so we've got a bunch of days that I sent out in either a letter or a note, or maybe I went straight to the first phone call. After 4 days, so let's assume that I sent this 4 days ago, which would have been the 6th. The sheet, when I open it in the morning, will start to tell me today's the day to make a phone call.
Nice.
I wish I could see you all. It seems to be a popular thing here. All right. Okay, so it's a visual coach, which basically means when you open it, it'll tell you there are things to do, and it'll show that by highlighting it in color. In this case, the moment somebody became active, so even when I just had today that I sent out the letter, let's let it update here. There it goes. The to-do column over here on the left turns yellow. The yellow in the to-do column just means this is an active, ongoing conversation at some stage. So in this case, I know that I've got to put a to-do here eventually, which is, make a phone call on a text. Let me go back to the 6th. So the 6th here is going to tell me, sorry, the internet's being slow, so it's slow to update. Bang, okay. Today I need to make some phone calls, so I go through the list and I say, yes, I need to call here. Let's say I make that call today. It's going to immediately expect then that I need to fill in an appointment date. That's because when you make a phone call, your goal is, in the support reason training, to get an
appointment.
Okay. This will continue to be like this until I get an appointment. So let's say that was 3 days ago, and I haven't made any calls since then.
Oh.
This will turn red.
It's red.
And it'll turn red on the to-do column.
Brilliant.
To indicate that I'm overdue for making a phone call. So I actually want to update this every single day that I make a phone call, and it'll still say that I need to fill it in, but it keeps up with me. Okay, once I get an appointment, let's say we got an appointment for a couple days from now here, it'll now actually want me to update the status, and that would be call for, that's not it, it's appointment scheduled. And then the alert should go away in a second here. There it goes. Normally this is a bit faster. I think my internet is just slow. So once those alerts go away, you know that you can just move on to other tasks. In this case, I no longer have a call plus text. I'm just going to delete my to-do. Okay, so finally, let's say the appointment actually happened yesterday. What it will expect now is that I need to make some confirmation calls. Just waiting here. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, what's today? Okay. The appointment, let's say the appointment was yesterday. I had that backwards. Okay. So the day after an appointment, it's assuming that you are going to be making a confirmation call. So that's going to be a to-do right here. It also assumes that I should be sending a thank you. So the thank you column here is expecting that I send a thank you and then record that I put in a thank you.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Actually, that was today. So it does the, what's that called? A strike through when the date is inappropriate. Like you can't send a thank you tomorrow. You have to record that you sent the thank you when you wrote it. So you can't trick yourself out by having future dates in here. I'm afraid that you would forget those future dates and not actually do it. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yep.
Yep.
I don't like the way you're controlling my life, Dan.
Yeah. So we also record that we had an appointment on the 9th here, so we'll put that in there. And then assuming we had an appointment, I will also have asked them, how would you like to receive my newsletter? So I have some categories here.
I love this.
Obviously, down here, you can put your own newsletter categories in there. This particular one called BRE stands for Business Reply Envelope. That means you're sending them a paper envelope inside your paper newsletter. And there's that's for financial supporters that get a paper newsletter. So I'm sending just a plain newsletter. Let me show you one other thing. Let's assume that that appointment was today. So there's one other alert. In the morning that you have an appointment, this is 10th, right? There it goes. Okay. So you will actually see today's appointments highlighted in the to-do column and over here in black. And you can scan for today's appointments. So let's put that yesterday like it was. And I did make my confirmation call today. Having made a confirmation call, it should be expecting me now to fill in the pledge that they're giving. Of course, if I had to leave a message, then I'm just going to leave a little temporary note here that I had to leave a message, and I'm just going to be calling back again tomorrow or the next day. So this will actually, let me delete this information for a second. Let's say the last confirmation I call was 5 days ago. It's going to probably go red here in a second. Yeah, there it goes red. Sorry, it's just being slow. So it will alert you that you're overdue for making phone calls. And this will turn red. But having made a confirmation call, it assumes that I should be putting in a pledge. So I'm going to put in $50. And I'm going to click per month. And that will update up here. That I have $19.50 left remaining, and I've raised 50. Here's my total budget, which I can adjust as needed. And then the math will update in just a second here. Go, go, go. There it goes. Okay, so that's updated. And then finally, it's continuing to tell me I need to make them a financial partner now. That's why this is highlighted. Okay, so finally we've finished the process with this person. And the pledge will remain in green as an alert because, at least for me, I often go back to people to ask for an increase the following summer, but they're already in the partner financial category, and I don't want to change that. So Storm can't tell whether this was a current supporter or just became a new supporter, and so it'll just leave the pledge highlighted, assuming that maybe there's a possible update. You know, maybe they did decide to increase, and it'll just keep that alert. That's the one alert that won't go away until you finally come back here and you delete your support raising record here. So having cleared all of these things, this whole line now clears, the alerts are all gone. That's the process you'd go through with every person on your list. So the idea is to be just a visual coach.
It is.
Dan, can you walk us through what tag 1 and tag 2 mean?
Yep. Okay, so I'm just going to use tag 1 and tag 2 to give myself additional ways to sort some names of people. So here's tag 1 is some items that you can't modify. So for example, you could just say low priority or high priority, and it will, I think this is coded to give a different color. We'll watch it in a second here. Maybe not. Okay, yeah. So these might give a different color to the alert. I think 2 stars might just make this yellow over here. Yeah, it's yellow. You can sort. So if you use the little handle right here, it says sort A to Z. You can sort any of these columns. And so I would often go through and tag a whole bunch of people with different things. And after I've done that, I can sort it by the tag. Okay, so some other tags here. Let me go to this column here. If I say urgent, that just is another indicator. I need to do something with this contact right now. Turns red. If I say they dropped, so I saw their giving report from last month, it's going to be red, and it's going to highlight this in yellow. If I say they gave an extra gift or they increased, it's going to highlight this in yellow, but this is going to turn blue just because it's not scary urgent. At least I think it'll turn blue. Yeah, blue. So these just have different kind of color sequences, and what you can do in the end is just sort the entire sheet by the tag in order to see a list of people in a certain category. Tag 2 is completely editable. So you can look down here, there's a tag 2 tab, and so I have some defaults in there, things that I like to use, like they like to post on Facebook about ministry, or they're a parent of a student, or they're out of a job, but you can invent your own. And then you can go through every once in a while and say, well, I'd like to see all the parents, and so just sort here A to Z, and you'll see all the parents in order. My goal is with a large list, like say 200 names, you do need ways to sort up and down multiple times to create more brainstorming opportunities in order to create to-do lists over here. Hopefully that makes sense. You just need ways to give yourself more to-dos every day. I have, let me do this here. I have copied out of Microsoft Excel a bunch of data, which is, I have the same column. So I have the to-do, the last, the first, etc. I have all the same columns in the other spreadsheet with some supporter information. And so I'm going to go here over to the beginning. I'm going to say paste special, paste values only. I won't do that for a second. The reason why you don't want to just paste is because each one of these cells in each column has a certain type of programming.
Yeah.
Right? So this will turn purple when you only have a first name, for example. Just like that. And so if you just paste, you'll overwrite all of the different programming across all the columns. So we will do something called paste special values only. And I pasted all my info in here. And now you see it's told me a bunch of stuff I need to do. Okay, so for example, here's a prayer partner. But it says that they're giving a pledge of 65. So it's confused, and it thinks either I need to put them as a financial partner or I need to change the pledge. Also, the frequency is highlighted because they're giving 65, but it doesn't know monthly or quarterly or yearly, so I should say monthly, I guess. It's showing me I need a last name for myself. Here's Bainbridge. That's actually a church, and so I could click here and say yes, it's a church, and then this alert will go away. It's showing me a red to-do item, and that's because if I just scan over here, I can see that there's a red initial contact I made with this person, and I never followed up with a call, and this was 8 months ago now. So
Where was your coach at?
Shame on you, Dan.
I know, yeah. So I've actually changed all the names on this sheet, but this was a real contact that we let drop this past summer. Let's see, here's a BRE, which means they have to be a financial supporter, but I don't have any financial information in here. Don't have the region for somebody. And of course, I could change this. I could go, instead of call for appointment, I could just say level 1, I need info. And then this should go away here. There's a bunch of little red triangles next to region. So if I hover, it gives me an alert that says the input is wrong. That's because Metro, for example, here is not in my region list here. So let me just type Metro in the region list. If I go back here now, the Metro alert is gone. Anyway, it's just alerting me that the data is not what it expects. So for me, what I normally do is I just start often by sorting by the last name in order to just get things in raw order. And then I go through and I just go name by name and I say, well, what status should they be in? I go all the way down and maybe I'll put the regions in. And when I start at this beginning of my support raising summer, I'll actually say, well, let me sort by status. And I'm going to see, okay, here's some work I need to do for getting info. So maybe I could give myself a to-do item to research this person. I'm going to wait on that. Develop this. Okay, so I'm going to set myself up to just generically visit. Here's call for appointments and by region. So maybe I'm going to pick 20 people out of my list and say call for appointments. So what I need to do, that just means start with a note. And then once I've written that note over here, I'll say that I wrote the note. And a few days from now, this will alert me that I need to make a call. And so on that morning, I'll go over here and I'll switch my to-do to make a call. And literally, the system is built so that what you're going to do is make yourself a bunch of to-dos on the left-hand column for the day. And then I would suggest at the end of that cycle, you take the to-do column and you sort it so that you can see all your to-dos all at once. Here's what I got to do for today. As long as you make sure that you're filling in information as you make every call and as you write every letter, schedule every appointment, then the sheet will automatically keep you going on new alerts. One last thing I didn't mention, here I have a financial partner and I've got a red in the visit column. That just means you should really visit your financial partner and you never have. So if you never have, it's going to be red until you do.
Got a few of those.
You could tell it to hold, and that will cause these alerts to just turn gray or disappear right here. So the to-do here just turned light gray, and you could ignore that lack of a visit, but it really does want you to visit those people. And here's one more visit, and this is from 2011. So they're special partner 2011. That's been more than 1,000 days, and it's programmed to say roughly 3 years you need to visit everybody. Again, you could choose to ignore that, but that's how it works. And that is the storm sheet. There are extra menu items here. Excuse me, let me move my window out of the way. There's some information on how to get started. You can set some settings. You can fix problems if you encounter them and restore original headers or all the custom formulas that are in these columns. And you can run an update to see if I've built another update on the website for you to download. You can even move your data from this sheet to the updated storm sheet, and it'll do that automatically for you. Okay, questions?
I have a question, Dan.
Yep.
Do you use this then to for maintaining your supporters as well?
Yeah, I have 440 names in my database, and I'm using this sheet as my management system fully.
There you go.
Dan,
Am I muted? I don't know.
Just a little louder, Nathan.
So if you're using this Storm app to its full effect, you shouldn't, at the end of a day, you shouldn't have any colors, correct?
Well, some colors, like the yellow, just indicates this is a live relationship, and that'll stay yellow all the way until you finally conclude the concluding call, and they're actually giving, or they said, no, we can't get
So
it.
you might have yellows on that to-do column, but you won't necessarily, but on the right side, you shouldn't have any colors if you're using it correctly.
Almost true. The ones that will stay would be if you made a phone call but had to leave a message.
Okay.
And so you didn't get the appointment, so the appointment will still be blue.
Okay, great.
But you should get everything else to disappear. Yeah. So here's what I would suggest, that you use a storm sheet and you actually sort by certain other columns, such as initial contact. You know, for example, they sent out 20 letters last week and then 20 this week. You know, a month from now, I think it's helpful to resort that sheet and go back and say, okay, let's see where you're at with all of those initial round of letters. I think, James, you had your sheet kind of working like that. This is a way you can sort it so that you can just, okay, line by line, let's go through all 20 of those initial letters now and just sort by that column to see where they're at.
Yeah.
I personally also will sort by the appointment, just to see how many appointments do they have coming up. And you can just view the information just to see how busy they are.
Dan, how would you see this, I guess, the VSR and the Storm? I mean, just for us in the Northwest here, how would you see those interfacing?
Yeah, there's just no,
I guess, for our current interns who are now onto the Storm.
Yeah,
caught up in the Storm.
There's no perfect system here. Obviously, if they're using VSR to report out, here's how my week went, they still have to be managing their week somewhere else.
Yeah.
So, and also if they share their Google Sheet with you, you know, you can view for yourself how they're doing in terms of appointments scheduled, calls made. But the Storm Sheet is still not perfect for viewing that. So I would suggest at least using that VSR email function for them just to report out on a weekly basis. Here's how I felt like my week went. Here's the total number of calls that I made, that kind of thing. I mean, I think the coach will have to look at it. I'm going to have to learn this myself this summer, how to use this with the intern I'm coaching and to make it meaningful. So I see it as a work in progress.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. If I can just step in, I think, are you saying that you can not have them fill in the goals and the to-dos on the VSR and just have them do it on Storm?
Well, one of the things I like about the weekly goals in VSR is it's a summary goal for a whole week. And
Okay.
I think Storm is going to give you daily to-dos,
Okay.
and maybe some ongoing to-dos, but it's not as much of a summary. It's more like it's the detailed list.
Okay.
But
So VSR is going to say 10 letters,
Yeah.
and Storm's going to tell you which are the 10 letters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or maybe you'll have a goal that you just don't see on Storm yet, but your goal is, I want to create 20 new contacts. You
Okay.
can't see that on Storm yet, but you can say what your goal is on VSR.
And to be honest with you, that's what I do, but I don't have Storm. I hadn't seen it before, but everybody always has an extra sheet that they're actually recording. So I thank you for sharing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Delyn, just so you know, if you go to the website, there is a video that walks through in more detail. It's a rough video. I'll do a nicer one sometime.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions about Storm? Okay. Well, it was fun being in a room of 30 people when they watched it, because when the alerts pop up, everyone goes, ooh, ah. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It was happening here, Dan. in this room today.
Okay, yeah. So, Julie, I'm at the end of things that I had on my mind.
Okay. Did you want to talk about coaching assignments for the summer? Did you want to say something specific?
Yeah, you probably have some idea of what a little bit has happened so far, but let's just kind of, I think we could go around the room and say where we're at in terms of what things we already know, people we already know we're coaching. And we're trying to ascertain if there's people we've missed from our support raising training too. So I'm coaching the central intern, and I'm coaching a Bellevue Chi Alpha staff, Ben, and central staff, the Davises. I think I'm probably not saying yes to more, maybe one more at most.
Dan, we've got our interns covered, but we haven't talked through our staff yet, so that's a conversation we'll have later.
Yeah, and one thing I would say about that is there's a give and take between whether every single person would want to have this kind of coaching relationship we've talked about today, or highly functional on their own and just need somebody to touch base with once in a while. Obviously I've functioned as my own coach for years, and it works a little bit better when I got a spouse to work alongside and we're kind of brainstorming together. But with your staff, I'm assuming you just work out what seems like it's most beneficial for each person.
Yeah, exactly.
Dan, do you have any, I guess, thoughts, or I don't know, in terms of when we send interns out of the Northwest, is it best to have them coached? Like, should we maintain a coaching relationship as they go to their next place, or should we try to pass that off?
So I've had a couple personal experiences, and also I think it was maybe you too, Julie, have coached somebody who was headed out who asked if we could be their coach. I think that the biggest thing that matters is that you have high level of clarity with the receiving ministry about how you can coach them. So there's the best thing that a coach has is the ability to say, you need to get to work. And if you don't have that level of relationship, because the receiving director just has low expectations for the relationship, or doesn't empower you or say to their incoming staff person, hey, here's your coach, you need to follow their lead, then I think you'll find it a bit more challenging unless the outgoing intern themselves is really asking for coaching, like they're a self-learner. So if they're kind of in that category, they need oversight, but you really haven't been given much of a platform on the receiving director, then I think it'll be challenging. I think just getting that really clear is helpful.
I will say too that not as many internship directors are as developed as you guys. So many don't have coaches. Several of our internship directors are not helping their interns even receive coaching. So obviously that's going to affect if you can pass them off or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One more thing I'd add, James, not just clarity about your role as a coach with a receiving ministry, but also trying to work with the receiving ministry on what is expected of the intern, the new staff member's summer schedule. Because if the receiving ministry is adding on assignments, you could find things your challenge would increase quite a bit because the effectiveness will go down in their support raising. Mm-hmm. James, I would just add that I don't think you should consider it an obligation of the sending internship ministry to have to figure that out for everybody who's being sent outside. You should be obligated for the people coming into your ministry for sure, and whatever capacity you have beyond that, up to you.
I'll mention too we've just had some recent conversations with all the support raising trainers in the U.S. for Chi Alpha. Just had some conversations the last couple days, and Delyn and Gregg and Mike and Delyn, you can speak more to this if I'm not covering it all, but they have some pretty big goals that they have for Chi Alpha as a nation, and wanting to make sure that every intern has a support raising coach, and then every person going on staff somewhere, how do we organize that so that every person can have a coach, and how can we organize it so that everyone is being fully funded? So on the national level, they're really pushing forward on those things to make sure that we're meeting people at every single level, so that people don't get lost, so that transition from intern to staff person isn't just kind of on their own for the summer and hopefully they make it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it seems like that's the challenge when you don't know if the receiving ministry is set up to coach well. And so, when we send people out, we really want them to be successful and make it beyond the 5-year mark, and so I think it's an interesting thing to try to negotiate, either even with our own time. We're coaching interns and we're coaching each other. So now trying to figure out how many people do we add to that list of who we're coaching while we're also support raising. It's kind of a challenging question that I think is going to be important, at least for us to figure out as we're sending folks out. Yeah. So, because I feel like if we send people out, I think I've seen it both ways, where send people out and they're not coached well, and and then. So.
I think, James, that's really a lot of the reason why we did the vertical support raising coaching, and what we wanted to do with you guys, we want to do with others, because I think we want to help people be better coaches. Yeah. And I think too, just in regards to what Julie was saying, I think it's going to be important for us to help identify who some good coaches could be. Potentially, maybe that's their part-time portfolio. Because I know support raising coaching is actually not my title. It is what I do on the side of my job. So currently I spend about 12 hours a week support raising coaching, and it's not even my job. And that's what you guys are doing as well. Yeah. I know. So we've got to identify some people. So one thing we're looking at is potentially spouses that are maybe just quarter time or part time. If they just have a really, they're good at coaching, and they could follow some of the things that we're presenting to them, like we just presented to you guys. I think those are the kinds of people we're looking for, or people that just don't have full portfolios right now, and that maybe we could add to their portfolio. Maybe 5 hours of coaching a week or whatever. So I'm just throwing that out. If you guys have some names and ideas, send them to me, because I can have the initial conversations with them, and we can do other trainings like this. This is a beta for us, this training, and we're going to need some feedback from you guys so we know how to do it better. So every internship, all 72 locations have good coaches that can be addressed, and then every state have coaching as well.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent.
I thought of 2 more hurdles I wanted to mention. I think these are important as well. One is just to make sure that the intern is giving a clear ask at the end of their presentation, and they're not shuffling the words around last minute and failing to actually ask clearly. Would you commit your support of $100 a month or some other amount to reach Students for Jesus at Central? So that's my default ask, right? Well, I'm shifting away from Central now, but would you commit your support, monthly support of $50 or $100 a month? Anyway, that clarity is really helpful, and there are some People you just discover, you recognize that they get to those direct face-to-face moments and they punt the football, or they just don't ask what they need to, or they ask small and they're afraid of the normal ask, or afraid of asking bigger. And we just train toward asking a standard amount that helps people know kind of what you're aiming at, and they'll decide how much they can give. And we just leave that in their hands and the Lord's hands. But I ask for $100 a month or some other amount. I need 20 people this summer who would give $100 a month. Would you be one of those people? So that's one, a clear ask. And sometimes you just need to verify that they're doing that. And then the second one is, I'm a big fan of working on direct, active, God-centered language, and moving away from indirect, passive sentences and statements about what we do, because of the need to communicate very clear vision. So what what do you do on campus? Well, we hang out in the student union, and we get to know people, and we spread a message of hope. Okay, that's all fairly indirect. We love students. I love talking with students about Jesus. God is really active this year in calling students into sexual purity and into a passion for reaching the homeless and the lost in our town, like really direct noun, verb, object, as opposed to in the reverse way. And I'm putting the noun mainly in Jesus' hands and God's hands. I love helping students get to know Jesus. And so that's I love. And that really kind of direct language. And I do find when I hear people giving their practice presentations that there's a lot of indirectness. And I think that translates into a lack of interest in the part of the audience. So I'd encourage everybody, all of you here listening, as well as the interns you coach, to have like your 5 primary sentences. When somebody asks you on the spot, this is kind of like the 90-second version of your bit, right? But you need to have the active sentences just right off the top of your tongue. Here's 5 things that I say. Little short takeaway things that people will remember later. When you said how much you love students, just that phrase, I love students, that sticks in people's minds. Or any of the other active statements you can make. You want to leave people with takeaways that inspire them. And so coach toward that end. Julie, thoughts? When would you be concerned about somebody not raising enough, that like the pace, the numbers?
Yeah. So kind of some of the stats that we use, some of them have already been mentioned, but in order, most people have the capacity to raise about $150 a month per week of support raising. Is that right, Dan? We've been going with that.
And that's $600 per month.
Yes.
I think that's a standard expectation in U.S. missions now.
It's actually it's Chi Alpha's expectation. What we are saying, if you are in any other ministry like Cru or InterVarsity, the expectation is $800. So in Chi Alpha, we dropped it to $600. And so just so we know that if you're doing this full time, the average in other ministries, even with their entry-level missionaries, they're expecting $800 a month.
Which is $200 a week.
Mm-hmm. But in Chi Alpha, we're expecting $150 a week, $100 per month.
So the implication there is 6 appointments per week. So that means you met with 6 people and 3 of them said yes to, which is a standard average. 50% of the people you meet with say yes. So,
$50 a month.
And so it's worth stating too that, so those are all averages, things you can expect, but someone's capacity for appointments could be much more than 6 appointments per week, which means that they can and will raise more than that amount. So those are kind of, to me, that helps kind of some baseline. So So if I see that a person I'm coaching is not hitting 6 appointments per week, if it's more like 2, we got to do something different. There's something that needs to shift and change there so that we can get that average back up to 6 appointments per week.
And Julia, I would add, I'm aiming for the 150-week average they can raise. That's still tight for reaching the intern budget. They got to keep that pace up all summer long to do that. But I think the thing that I'm encouraging every intern to aim for is 2 to 3 appointments a day as their mental target. This is what you need to aim at. And maybe often they could only end up getting 1 a day, but because they're aiming higher, I think they're actually getting the 1 a day.
Right.
And I think they can actually get 2 to 3 appointments a day, especially with people who can meet lunch hour, midday, afternoon, who are non-traditional, etc. So I just aim at that, aim high on the appointment pace.
Hey, Dan, a hurdle I see with interns is the RUI. It slows them down. I know at Western they go at the after. So I'm wondering maybe how you would address that portion of helping people go through.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to pause for about 10 days here.
Yeah, so we address that every single year, and we put into our support raising training that interns should plan ahead their first round of 20 letters, because RUI starts right after school is out. They typically get somebody to mail all that first round of contacts out during RUI, so when they come back and they arrive in Seattle, they're already needing to start making phone calls for appointments. So not much time is lost if they're proactive about it.
Okay.
I don't think it's often very reasonable to get them to be phone calling while in Springfield. I've had a few try, but at the very least, they can start the phone calls the day that they get back.
Great.
Oh, we got 5 minutes left. How are we going to use it? Judy?
Well, I was just going to say, so part of Gregg and Delyn's training mentioned the Faith and Finance talk by Linda Seiler, and then the 5-minute and the 90-second. And I just wanted to do a brief letting you know what those are in case you haven't been to the training recently. So Linda Seiler's talk is a 50-minute talk and just kind of shares a lot of her story of is very inspirational, encouraging, how like the first even 3 minutes of it is about how things are worked out in prayer before they're worked out in reality. And so it would be encouraging to listen to as a coach and familiarize yourself with.
Can we get a hold of that somehow?
Yeah, that was under the spiritual, so on the day 2 of the presentation.
Well, things to listen to.
Can we get hold of it?
Yes, it's on.
Once they invite a coach to their VSR thing, we have access to it.
Yeah, so on VSR, under the spiritual folder, the first thing says Faith and Finance Message. So you can download it there. The other things were the 90-second, the 5-minute. So the outline of the 30-minute presentation, which is designed for appointments, is that you're presenting a story of a student that shows a need on campus. You're sharing vision for how your ministry meets that need. You're going to share what you do day to day. And then you're sharing a changed life story of a student who's been impacted by your ministry. You give a explanation of how missionary giving works, and you make an ask. So that's the 30-minute. So the 5-minute and the 90-second are like condensed and then further condensed of the big picture of that. And the 5-minute is more specific presentation, like a 5-minute window at a church. So you're asked to give a formal presentation, but you're still trying to meet the general outline of the 30-minute presentation. And then the 90-second is more like you're at church and there's that awkward 2-minute greeting time that you say, hi, how are you? How's it going? Fine. So the 90-second is equipping the person raising support to have something to say beyond I'm fine. Mm-hmm. So it's equipping you to say, oh, well, I had a pretty good week. I met with my Saudi Arabian friend, Hanadi, and she just had a baby, and it was really great to be able to connect with her. And we ended up having a spiritual conversation about how Muslims view fasting. And so anyway, so you're equipping them so that they're prepared with a story. They're prepared with, this is what I'm doing next year, so that you can take advantage of those small moments to develop relationships towards support raising. So in this process of coaching them, you may, if they're about to present to their church, then that would be a great opportunity for you to hear their 5-minute window that they're going to give in your coaching call. If they're struggling to find contacts and there's some possibility of building some relationships in their church, then maybe talk through, okay, how can you take advantage of the 5 minutes before church, thinking about your 90-second? How can you take advantage of the greeting hour? How can you take advantage of those 5 minutes after church to move forward in some of those relationships and develop more contacts? That's what I got.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I will find some way to share the video of this so that this can be used elsewhere. And I'll send out an email that has the Word document from Gregg. And I'm not sure if there's anything else. Anything else somebody needs to see a copy of that I didn't make note of?
That looks good. Can you send a link to the video and the document in the same email?
As opposed to 2 emails?
Yep.
I suppose so.
Thanks.
I just got a note while we were talking. There's a gal that I knew when I was a student at WSU. She's actually supported me off and on for years, but inconsistently. And I inquired 2 days ago if she would be interested in an automatic giving. And she wrote back as we were talking here and said, yes, I would. I've signed up for $40 a month. So, hey.
There you go.
Little initiative. All right. Well, hey, this has been good. So I'll just share the email, and I do think UCM team, especially if you guys have some debrief, the debrief would be very useful for me, for Gregg, and Delyn. We'd love to create something that could be used, I think, more often and around the country.
Great.
So
we'll do.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Delyn. Thanks, Julie.
Good seeing you.
Talk to you later.
Yep. She gone.